白井字，唔該。
Buenas tardes. Para recibir el servicio de interpretación al español, por favor llame a este número de Google Meet. 1-682-305-7883 con el código de acceso 301-716-065 con el símbolo de número al final. Gracias. Please, Arabic interpreter.
Yes, thank you. مرحبا بكم إلى اجتماع هذه الليلة للاستماع على الترجمة باللغة العربية. يرجى الاتصال بالرقم التالي من هواتفكم عبر جوجل ميت. الرقم 1484-420-731-9. الرمز 570-735-905 رمز المربع. شكرا. Thank you. Next interpreter, please.
If we don't have the Korean interpreter, maybe we can have the Samoan interpreter.
Patano fatu le malu au fono. Olo fa peona o foi na mai ni tanga luenga wa onga i San Francisco. Le au nanga e fadi ni winga i mta upo lo fe fasoa i le nei fontanga. Pa mole mo la tolo mna wir ni au nanga wala mai numero telefoni. Tasi fa iva o iva di malua fitu. Ilona pine ulu fale iva lua iva ono tolu pa o ono hashtag.
Kính thưa
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Kính thưa quý vị quan khách, trong buổi tối ngày hôm nay, học khu thống nhất San Francisco có cung cấp phiên dịch bằng tiếng Việt. Nếu quý vị muốn nghe bằng tiếng Việt, xin vui lòng gọi cho số 1401-684-3285 và nhấn số PIN.
I believe that we are still, we don't have the interpretation available for the Korean and Tagalog link channels, but when they do, you can call this number and we will get started with the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. And for those of you that are here in person, this slide will be not up with the numbers to call in, but we do have the information there on the door and then on that poster as well if you have any people coming in, and we can direct them to the numbers. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Cristina Urbano. I work in the superintendent's office, and I'm so excited to see so many folks participating both in person and online. I want to start out with our SFUSD meeting norms. We want to make sure that we keep equity at the center for our students and adults as we talk about our schools. And we also want to make sure that we honor all voices and we honor different perspectives. You are going to notice in the facilitation tonight that we have a lot of small group opportunities for you to be able to talk with each other. And so that is in an effort to be able to share your voice and be able to hear from more folks at once. And we also want to make sure that we assume best intentions. Okay, and I'm going to get started with the purpose of today's session. And so we have three main objectives for the language program overview of restructuring of the portfolio of language programs. The first is to provide an additional and an intentional space for the language program community to review information about the Resource Alignment Initiative. And so the Resource Alignment Initiative is the district's phased plan to prepare for school closures, mergers, and co-locations. And so today what we wanted to do is provide an additional space for us to begin to think about the impact that may have on some of our language programs. We are here to inform the community of the models of the language programs that we offer in the district and some of the ongoing challenges that we've had in offering these programs. And as I mentioned, we want to talk about how school closures, mergers, and co-locations might impact the actual number of schools offering language programs. We may have fewer programs, but we do hope to have higher quality programs and higher quality schools that host language programs. And then the third objective of today is to begin to gather preliminary information from you all about what are your values, your hopes, and your concerns about the elementary language programs. And then, and then what questions do you have that will need to be answered as we continue with the resource alignment? And so I do want to start with this framing to let everybody know we are here to talk about our commitment to language programs. We are here to talk about our commitment to 3 models of biliteracy, dual language immersion, and world language in elementary school. And the conversation today is going to be focused on elementary schools. And so as we don't know, we're still in the early phase of our resource alignment initiative. We really want to make sure that we're gathering your values, hopes, and concerns as we begin this process. So, yes, question?
I hear you referencing elementary schools, but I thought in your materials this was supposed to be for K through 8 as well.
Yes, K through 8, and I'm sorry, K through 8 and elementary that host language programs.
Because your slide is only talking about elementary,
Yes,
so that's a typo, correct?
yes, thank you. Mhm. Okay. And for those of you that are online, the question was, is this pertain to K through 8 as well? And the answer is yes. Okay.
Will there be additional meetings for middle school?
The changes that we're going to talk about today and the possible 3 program models that we're talking about today are specific to the elementary and K through 8 models that we have for students in K through 5 programs.
Right, but will there be an additional meeting to talk about how realignment will affect middle school?
Not for the language programs, because I'm actually going to go into that right now. Okay? So the question, I'm going to have to repeat the questions when we're asked the questions in person, because those of you who are online aren't able to hear the question. So the question was, will there be an additional meeting for middle school and high schools about language programs? And the answer is no, because we don't anticipate the impact to the program to be the same. There's different models in middle and high school. Okay? So I'm going to go into language program definitions. I'm going to invite you all to look at this slide. We do have lots of lengthy slides that explain lots of information that give the specifics about how many types of programs we have and what languages we offer. But we want to begin with reiterating the commitment from San Francisco Unified that we are committed to continuing to offer 3 types of multilingual programs. And the 3 models that we have in our district right now at the elementary and K through 8 level are dual language immersion, which is DLI, biliteracy, and world language in elementary school. So if you have the slide deck in front of you, you're going to see that I passed over a whole bunch of slides. To me, this is going to be the best explanation, and if you'd like me to go back to the other slides, I can. So if you're following along, find the page that has the 4 fingers up, and what we're going to do is we're going to go over what are the nuances in each of these models. So in the dual language immersion program, what is different between the biliteracy and the DLI program is the student demographic. And so for students in dual language immersion, it's a mix of students who are native speakers of the target language, bilingual students, so students that have different levels of bilingualism, and for English-speaking students. The instruction is specifically designed for language learners of all different levels. So as we learn language, there's a spectrum of being bilingual, and so this program is designed for students that fall anywhere across that spectrum. The curriculum is the same as biliteracy. So if you're in, for an example, a Spanish dual language immersion program, the curriculum, the books that are in front of you, the things that you're reading and interacting with should be the same as for students that are in a biliteracy program in that same language in Spanish. And there are many languages available for the DLI programs. For the biliteracy model, the biliteracy is also called a one-way immersion in some places. It's the same student demographics. So only students who are native speakers of the language, and some of whom are already bilingual, are participants in this program. The instruction is tailored to meet the needs of native speakers, and it gives them immediate access to the core curriculum. So what do we mean by that? For students who come to us speaking Cantonese and Spanish, for example, we give immediate access to the curriculum. So we can allow students to access math, science, social studies in their native language. But this also applies for students, as we mentioned, that are on a spectrum of their multilingualism. And then the difference in the world language in elementary school is that there are different student demographics. Any student can enroll in a world language program. The instruction is housed within a general education program, so most of the day is in English. There are 30 to 45 minutes, 3 times a week minimally, for language instruction. And there are a growing number of languages available. We've most recently added Arabic and Vietnamese to our elementary portfolio. And so the main difference between immersion and biliteracy to the world language in elementary school is the instruction is mostly in English in the world language program, and what students are learning is the language. They're learning Arabic, they're learning Spanish. The difference in the immersion programs and the biliteracy is that students are actually doing content level work in math, in Spanish. They're doing science in Cantonese, for example. They're being able to read and write in both languages, or more than 2 languages. So I wanted to present this, and again, with the reason being, we are committed to continuing offering these 3 types of programs in San Francisco Unified. Okay. Also wanted to share that for students in general education who are not enrolled in any of those 3 programs, they're not in biliteracy, they're not in a DLI or a world language program, we do offer designated ELD and integrated ELD, so English language development, to any multilingual student that comes into our education program, so that students have the opportunity to access the curriculum and begin to learn English as well. Okay, so at this point, we want to stop and gather your opinions. And so we're going to invite you, we have some paper up here, and we have, can our district staff raise their hand and so people can know who you are? Thank you. We have some pens and papers up here, and we want to give you a chance to share your opinion. We will gather this from you if you're willing to share it back with us. Which of these programs have you chosen for your children, for your family? Are you in a biliteracy program, DLI program, world language program? And we want to know why. Why did you choose this program for your child and for your family? And we also want to know, in your opinion, what has been the most valuable part of your child's experience in a language program? So we invite you to write this down. We invite you to get into small groups and share. I think we'll have about 10 minutes for this, and Eric is going to be leading those who are online.
Hello, everybody. I just want to introduce myself. Eric Cuentos. I'm part of the team that's helping to put together these language program community sessions. And for those who are online, we're going to take about a 10-minute break while the people who are in person are going to be filling these out. You are going to be having the opportunity to answer these questions virtually. We have a Google form, which I'm going to send to you in a minute. And then you can answer these questions in addition to the other questions that other folks will have a chance to answer later on as well. What I do want to say is the information that you guys are writing here, in case that's a question, I see someone raise their hand. Why are we asking these questions? We want to know what are the values that you carry with you when you are choosing language programs. We want to be able to use this information as we are creating the portfolio of schools that have language programs. So make sure that that portfolio matches the values that you have. That's the reason why we're asking these questions. If you have questions about what actually to say or not say in these, please raise your hand and one of us can come over to you and talk to you a little bit more in person. Yeah? Did that answer your question?
I guess my question was, how is the questions and feedback we give incorporated into the resource alignment, and specifically the criteria that you have? Because we can say that we love our school because X, Y, and Z, but if it falls outside of the criteria that you're using for co-locations and mergers doesn't even matter. So,
Can we hold that question for the next part?
Yes.
That conversation's coming up right after this.
oh, okay.
Yeah, but we definitely want to hear from you why you think, what is so important about language programs. This is an opportunity for you guys to share what you feel about that. Thank you.
Would it be beneficial for us to align with the budget of the survey, like excellent?
I mean, I think you should just say what you
No, but I want to be like strategic to like make the, just like at the other alignment meetings, they're like, if you don't have this survey, we're not on it.
Yeah, so the survey window has closed, so this is not gonna be added to the survey window. So that's why I say, please, speak your heart, I would worry about aligning survey information. I do hear you and saying, you know, this didn't impact the criteria. It won't, the survey has been closed, we've got it.
We just want to be strategic to like, allocate our, like, I don't think anyone's like, we feel in our heart.
Yes, so you never do that.
I don't believe that's really it, like, but like, really say, this is excellent. You know what I mean, like, equitable, like, I don't know, I could just do a stakeholder, you know, but.
So as we realign our schools, we don't know when schools are going to be closed, but we do know that we are going to be using these models. We don't know when they're going to be released. But as we strengthen our models, we want to know what is it that evaluating right now, so that as we create those programs, those programs have these scores that are accepted. And I'm going to repeat this as, you know, so that the baseline. And that's going to take.
Well, so once they, what's the kind of thing that would protect the program, you say it's important.
Right, and that was the feedback that we got when we did the criteria.
I thought that was not appropriate. That was a gunshot. The parents did it. But it was like from the illegal fireworks. Yeah.
Wasn't supposed to, it was just like everyone's going, very quiet, and all of a sudden, boom,
Oh my God.
and then another.
Yeah. But anyways, the kid had a moment. And then they did it again. With the second confetti shot. first one's on me. I took a photo.
All right, thank you so much. For those of you who are in person, if you wouldn't mind, if you're willing to share your worksheet, if you can hold it up for us, and we have our staff members coming around. For those people who are online, you were able to give the answers to this question on a Google form. Okay. All right, and we're gonna keep on moving. And so what we're gonna go into now, the section that we're gonna go over, we had some questions in the live audience about what are you doing with our opinions and our information? How does this relate to the survey? And I'm gonna go through the redesign of our language program portfolio. What I'm gonna present in this section is our current state and the challenges that we've had for many years in the elementary and K-8 language programs. And then at the end, I'm gonna be able to answer that question more clearly after we've presented the current state of where we're at. So we also got the question, why are you doing this at the end of the school year? Why are you doing this for students who are of elementary age? And we really want to make sure that we are sharing that we have care, transparency, and accessibility for our multilingual community. So we did offer town hall sessions to, to all of our SFUSD community about the Resource Alignment Initiative, but we wanted to offer space, again, like we said, for those of us who are work in language programs, thinking about what could the potential impact for this be. And so a lot of these slides, if you attended any of our resource alignment initiatives, you will see these are a lot of repeat slides. The reason that SFUSD is undergoing the process of resource alignment is really to focus and deliver on our commitment to equity and excellence. So ensuring that each and every student at each and every school, each and every day has access to these 5 things that we believe that all students should have. Right now, there are many schools that are able to offer all of these things. There are also schools that are only able to offer some of these things. And so that is the purpose why we are looking across our district to make sure that we are aligning the resources that we have to the needs that our students have and our families have across the city. Again, the purpose of today is to refine our commitment and provide clarity on the future of our portfolio, on the future of which schools will be offered, how many schools and what types of programs will be offered. And we want to reiterate that we will continue to elevate multilingual opportunities through biliteracy, dual language immersion, and world language programs. And so that's why we started the meeting talking about which programs are your students in, which programs are your children in, and what are the differences in between those programs. Because as we go forward and we align our resources, we are going to have likely fewer schools that are hosting language programs, but we want them to be high quality. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we are committed to implementing research-based programs. And right now, the way that our programs are going, some of them are really high functioning and high implemented according to research, and some of them are lacking the resources they need. And so we want to make sure that we're evenly distributing our resources so that students have the same experience, whether they're in a biliteracy program in one side of the city, a DLI program at the other side of the city, or they're in a world language program. And so, as I mentioned, if you've been to our resource alignment, you know that our circumstances have changed and our school portfolio has not changed. San Francisco has had a big commitment to language programs. And so you can see this is a map of K through 5 and K through 8 language programs. I say, as you can see, it's hard to see, I know. It's a very small map. We do, I think we had one big one here. Oh, we have them on the wall over there. So when you get a chance to stand up, you can go zoom in. If those of you who are online, you'll have to zoom in. This is a map of all of where our K through 8 and elementary language programs are throughout the city. As we mentioned, we have had lots of shifts in our student demographics, but we have not changed where we're offering language programs. And so I want to explore a little bit more, what do we mean when we're talking about aligning resources? And so I'm going to give you an example. As we saw in the map, there are some schools that are literally within 5 minutes of each other. They are in close radius to each other, and students at those schools have really different experiences. So for example, there might be a student who is at the Blue School, and at the Blue School, they have many resources that the Green School doesn't have. So they might have things like an administrative team that has a principal and a vice principal and a social worker. They have a fully staffed office with all of the people that are in the office. They have a family liaison. They have a librarian. They have a music program. They have multiple people that are supporting special education students in addition to their classroom teacher. They have an interventionist, someone who can say, hey, these students really need extra support in math or in literacy. And so they have people that can go in and support that. This is the type of robust school community that it takes for us to be able to deliver our promise of equity and excellence. What's happened in many of our schools with language programs is we don't have enough resources for the school itself to be able to deliver this experience to those students. So we might have students that are in smaller classrooms, but often what's happened over the years is we took the person who was going to be the literacy interventionist who was going to work with that small group of students, but there was no teacher for another classroom. So instead of being able to provide literacy intervention, they had to go into the classroom and teach a group of students. And so, it might be a principal who is all on their own. We often lack custodial services because we have so many buildings up and going. There are fewer opportunities for extracurriculars or for what we call the specialized core. Librarians having to go from one school to another, a music program where the music teacher can only be there 1 day a week. And so really the purpose of this is to make sure that we are offering equal access, right, to these programs. And I'm going to explain to you why that's been so difficult. As we go into talking about language programs specifically, we want to share this. These are 7 guiding principles for dual language education. Dual language education applies to biliteracy programs as well, any program where the language of instruction is in more than one language. And this is from the Center of Applied Linguistics. What makes a quality language program? Making sure that classrooms are full communities so that students can learn with and from each other as designed by the program model. So one of the most important features of a language program is making sure that you have students who are at different spectrums of multilingualism, because students actually learn more from each other than they learn from adults, right? So a lot of the language learning happens when students are playing together, they're talking with each other. Those of you who are in these programs probably have experienced that with your own kiddos, that, oh, I really want to play with this friend and this friend speaks another language, so I'm going to try and speak that language, right? So the value of this is really diversity in language speakers. And when we don't have enough students for the classrooms, that jeopardizes the quality of the model. We also need qualified teachers with bilingual credentials and the proficiency in the language. School principals need to have a clear understanding and a strong advocacy of language programs. So they need to know, what is a biliteracy program? How does the curriculum work? What should I expect of my students in this language and that language as we talk about outcomes for students? We need alignment to program models. So we need to make sure that, for example, if the program model is supposed to be 60% in the target language and 40% in English, that we're actually able to provide that level of instruction, that we're not compromising, well, we really can't do 60%, so we're actually just going to do 20%, right? We want to make sure that we're honoring the design of the program. We need culturally responsive school environments that embrace and elevate the languages and the cultural assets of students and families, both in the classroom and around the school at large. There needs to be consistency in curriculum and instruction so that students in the same language program across different schools are accessing the same high quality books and materials and experience. So I've said this multiple times and I'll say it again. We want to make sure that students that are in a biliteracy program on one side of the city have the same experience as students who are in a DLI program on another side of the city if they're in the same language. We want to make sure they have access to high quality resources. And also for educators, we need frequent and specialized professional development for teachers of multilingual students. We often have a lack of professional development opportunities for those of us who teach in dual language programs. So a lot of times a monolingual professional development session is offered, but we're teaching kids that are learning in 2 languages. So we need to make sure that we have programs that are providing professional development for teachers and staff in those programs. Is this a clarifying question? Okay, go ahead.
Are these criteria that our programs are being measured on? As in, our principal will get a score, the amount of teachers we have will get a score? Is that what this slide is?
Not at all. So the question was, is this the criteria that schools will be measured on and get a score? And the answer is no. This slide has nothing to do with the criteria. This document is many years old, I would say at least a decade, if not more. These principles come from the Center of Applied Linguistics. And so the Center of Applied Linguistics is a research center that has been doing research on multilingual programs for many years. This is from the 3rd edition. It's a 200-page document that shows what have been the outcomes for students in bilingual programs. So this has absolutely nothing to do with the criteria.
So our programs won't be measured on this. It's just
The purpose of this slide is for us to understand, if we are going to provide a language program and we want it to be high quality, we have to have these things for our programs. So if we say, well, we don't have enough qualified teachers, we're not able to deliver on a high quality program if we don't have teachers who are certified in that language, for example. If we don't have full classrooms where students can be models of language for each other, the quality of the program is compromised. So that's what this slide is about. Okay, I'm going to keep on going. They're actually, so when we get through this part of the slide deck, these same slides are around the room and they're online, and you're going to actually have smaller group discussions with our staff to go more in depth about these questions. Okay, because I also want to honor that folks online are not able to raise their hand and ask a question in the same way right now. The other thing that I am going to go over are right now our current language program capacities, enrollments, and open seats. When we talk about capacity, capacity means how many spaces or seats, like we say in education, are there in all schools for the language programs. And so as you look at these numbers, we're not talking about one school. We're saying if we have 13 Spanish biliteracy programs, for example, these would be the number of spaces for students across all of the schools. When we talk about how many students are enrolled, we mean how many children are actually in a seat at that school. And when we talk about open seats, we mean how many spaces are available or vacant, how many empty chairs, so to speak, are there in the programs. And so we have 2 slides here about capacities and enrollment. I'm going to walk us through the example of Cantonese biliteracy, but if you go to the next slide, you'll see the capacities and open seats for all of our language programs. So, and the purpose of sharing this data is to show how our enrollment has dropped in our language programs. The same is true for our general education programs, but again, this session is specifically to look at our language programs. So for the Cantonese biliteracy in 2021-2022, we had capacity, or we had room for 1,894 students. That year, we still had 438 open seats. So we had empty spaces, right? We had classrooms that were not full. And so what we did as a district is we said, well, we don't have that many students. We're going to reduce the capacity the next year. So the following year, we lowered the capacity. Lowering capacity could look like closing a classroom. It could look like saying instead of having 22 students in this classroom, we're going to have 15 students in this classroom. There are multiple ways to lower capacity. And so the capacity for the program was lowered from 1,894 to 1,539. Even as we lowered the capacity, we still had open seats. There were 224 open spaces that we didn't have students enroll in. Following year, the same pattern continued. We reduced the capacity from to 1,375, and we still had 168 open seats. And so I wanted to just share, when we say we have fewer students, we continue to reduce the capacity, and we are still experiencing lower enrollment across all of our programs. The other thing I want to say is that program enrollment is not the most important factor to think about quality programs, because it is oftentimes more controllable. What I want to look at is the teachers by language credentials in San Francisco Unified. We can only have as many programs as we have credentialed teachers, right? And so I'm going to walk us through this example of the language credentials for each of the languages that we offer. So for Arabic, we have 3 teachers who are on an emergency or an intern or probationary credential, and we still have 1 vacancy. For the Cantonese teachers, those who have a BCLAD that are certified to teach in Cantonese, we have 96 teachers. Of those 96, 93 are tenured, which is excellent that we have so many experienced teachers in this program. And we know that within the next 5 years, many of these teachers are actually going to retire. We currently don't have a strong pipeline for the Cantonese teachers. And so that is a concern that we have, is that over the next several years, we are going to have fewer Cantonese certified teachers. So you can see for Filipino, Japanese, Mandarin, we don't have as many vacancies. For Spanish, we have 122 teachers who are tenured with a Spanish certification. We have 56 who are probationary, intern, or emergency. And what we've seen in our Spanish programs particularly is that a lot of people are struggling with being able to complete their certifications. It's also true in general in education that first-year teachers sometimes don't continue to be second-year teachers, and that's normal for our profession. But we do know that it is really hard to retain teachers who have to go through the challenges of those certification tests. And we don't have the same network of support that we used to have centrally to help people pass those certification tests. And we still currently have 9 vacancies for Spanish classroom positions. And so we share this again to say, we can only have as many classrooms as qualified teachers. So for the example with Spanish, we have 9 vacancies. So that means there are 9 classrooms where families enrolled their child into a Spanish bilingual program, whether it be immersion, world language, or biliteracy. And families enrolled with the expectation that their child would be learning Spanish. And the reality is we don't have a teacher for that classroom maybe that speaks Spanish. And so in order for us to deliver on the quality of a bilingual program, we have to have the correct number of bilingual teachers, right? So we're gonna share again, I talked a little bit about student enrollment, and you saw some of the numbers there. And again, you're gonna have more time to dig through each of these slides. So if you have questions, please hold them. You can write them down for yourself, and we'll be able to go up and touch them literally on the posters for those of you that are here. And so some of the questions we have about enrollment are that SFUSD has a choice system, so parents decide which programs to enroll in. We might say, why are there so many vacancies? Why aren't we just putting kids into these open seats? And the answer to that question is, it is the family's choice of what school they go to. So just because there is an open seat in this particular immersion program or this particular biliteracy program doesn't necessarily mean that the family is going to choose that option. Another thing is that there are 600 fewer students enrolled in elementary language programs than in 2018. And one of the things that we're experiencing right now is because we have so few students and teachers having to create combination classes. So for example, 2nd and 3rd grade students being placed together. And we have at least 21 elementary schools that right now have a combination class in a language program. I spoke about the bilingual teachers and the shortage, the concern that many of our teachers will retire, and that there are fewer applicants for credentialing programs. And I would also say there is a smaller central office team in order to be able to support. We're going to hold questions until we get to the end, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask questions about each slide. Another ongoing challenge that we've experienced in the language programs is the opportunity for teachers to collaborate with each other. So for those that are at sites where there's just one teacher for that language per grade level, it's often that teacher's responsibility to do all of the lesson planning. When you look at student work, you don't have a partner to collaborate with because no one else speaks that language or is teaching in that language. And so teacher collaboration, just like we said it's important for students, it's so important for teachers to be able to have grade level partners that they can create lesson plans with, look at student work with, do family engagement with, really have that team. School leadership has also been challenging for schools that have more than one language program. Because it's often hard to address the unique needs of each program. So, for example, resources in other languages other than English are more expensive in this country than resources in English. And so there's often a fight of how are we going to spend our limited resources as a school? Or when we have to choose an interventionist, do we choose an interventionist that can speak this language or that can speak that language? And so that has been some of the challenges, for example, for school leaders. And then the central office support, as I've mentioned, it's been reduced to just 1 or 2 teachers per each language that are able to provide curriculum support, so making sure that teachers have the curriculum they need in that language, helping people actually pass their credentialing tests, and programmatic needs. So that team has been greatly reduced. And so this actually goes to the question a bit of, you know, what are the guiding principles then are we going forward with as we strengthen our commitment to language programs? So access, we want to make sure that we are committed to equity and excellence, and we want students to access language programs across the city and have similar experiences no matter what language program they're in. We want to make sure that we have sustainability. So we need to ensure that each language program has robust enrollment and budget allocation that can be sustained over time. And so when we talk about why is enrollment so important? Enrollment is tied to the budget. So if you expect, for example, that you're going to have 3 classrooms open, but you actually have 2 classrooms open, that changes the budget. That changes how many teachers you can hire. That changes some of the resources that you can have at the school. And that unpredictability is really hard for school communities. And so if we stabilize our enrollment, we can stabilize our school budgets as well. And then quality language programs. As we went over that slide that had those 7 points, we know that you need a lot of resources to have a quality language program. Okay, and so now this is the opportunity that we have to answer some of the questions. And we're gonna actually do an activity where we're gonna invite you to stand up and to go to posters. If you have a particular question about one of the slides that we presented, a staff member will be there to answer your question. We have, I don't know which language is where, but we do have English, Spanish, and Chinese in the room. You want to take over?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, everybody, again. Okay, so this is an opportunity. Sometimes we know that there are different types of learners. So, you know, you got a lot of really intense, dense information. And this is an opportunity for you to look at it again, like literally touch it, talk about it with other people, and that way understand it a little bit better. And then after you've had a chance to like sort of talk about it and maybe talk to one of us a little bit about it, then we have 3 questions that we want you to answer. And we would like you to grab some Post-it notes, and we'll be passing it out. We'd like you to be able to answer the 3 questions that are there. After you've heard all this stuff, what questions do you have about Resource Alignment Initiative that you would like us to lift up so that we, when we're continuing the process? So we can't answer a lot of the questions now, but we definitely expect that we will be able to answer more questions when we know more about what the portfolio will actually look like. Also, we'd like to know, what are your hopes for this process? And what are your concerns? All of those are the kinds of things that will really help us to think about how we will make sure that we will take in those into consideration when we are sharing out the information about the portfolio of schools. If anybody has any questions about what we're supposed to do now, raise your hand. Otherwise, okay, yes?
So the mergers and co-locations, is that also being decided based on the DAC like criteria and all of that stuff? Is that the same process that's happening for high schools and other?
It's all part of the Resource Alignment Initiative, correct?
So in those meetings with the DAC, there is time for like public comment and to put your comment in the record. Where is that going to be in this process?
So what we're trying to do, we are trying to collect. Okay, sorry, yes. So so the question is, because this is something similar to the resource alignment conversations that have been happening in the DAC meetings, and the DAC meetings do offer opportunity for public comment. Where is there going to be an opportunity for public comment? And this isn't exactly the same thing as a DAC meeting, so we're not structured in the same way, but we are very much interested in people's opinions and their feedback. And this particular moment would be one of the places to do that. If you have other questions, other opportunities to kind of give your input, you can always come and raise your hand and talk to one of us. Yeah.
And there will be time for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to invite everyone to go to the posters. We have Spanish over here. I'll be with Spanish.
Spanish and English, actually, over there, okay, and Chinese.
English over here. Chinese back here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we have English over here.
And Spanish and Chinese, actually.
Oh,
mm-hmm.
Over here.
And feel free to, the questions are posted on both sides of the room. So the questions that are on that side are the same questions that are on that side over there by Christina. And so feel free to post your Post-its on either one of those.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, there's Post-its. There's a pen left.
There was that.
so go. Yeah, you can put Post-its here. Put them anywhere, actually. They'll still be crooked. But
So are you answering questions from the district?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I'm curious
My
about
name's
some,
Tam.
Tammy K. Kelsey. Nice to meet you and thank you for being here. So I'm curious about how these numbers might differ by different grade levels. Because for example, my son's going into an immersion program in the fall. It seems like it's completely oversubscribed, at least at the K level. And I wouldn't be surprised if it drops off at higher levels. So, I mean, is that the case for here? Like, if there's a lot of demand for the earliest levels, then the 92% number isn't going to show that like entry point interest, but it might drop down over time as students like move out of the district. Students aren't going to transfer into a higher grade level at the same rate as they're going to try to join a commercial program at the K level.
And so I don't have that data.
Yeah.
I didn't create this, but
Yeah.
my question then is, what's the concern? Like what are you hoping to get from if you went with a paper like that? That's something that we would
Yeah.
What are you concerned about?
So, yeah, if you just look at that in isolation, you might think, oh, there's like not enough interest to fill all the available seats. But that might be a bad takeaway if there's like more than 100% interest at the K level or the first grade level. And it's parents who aren't getting into those who are turned away, dropping out of that part of the process. And yes, like maybe attrition later on isn't filling seats, maybe seats later on aren't getting filled, but I wouldn't want the district to take away like an overall like full age spectrum as a signal that there isn't a lot of demand for the entry point into the system.
Sorry, as a current stalking parent, I was just curious if this reflects the fact that from our teacher's perspective, based on the make our fourth and fifth grade classes smaller to, for our purposes, we think that they want an instructor with a smaller classroom as a teacher ratio. But is that reflected in here that we're choosing to make those smaller instead of creating a 30 as a district to have and the other fourth and fifth classes? So let me get to your question.
Sure. Yeah.
We have another district person. Let me ask you your question.
Sure. Yeah.
And really your concern is that you want to make sure that we're strategically planning so that parents have an opportunity and access to these programs. And yes, our enrollment center has really detailed information and tracks that information over time to be able to predict what families' interests are and where they are. So yes, that analysis is done by our enrollment center, and I think that's your overall goal here. We don't and we don't either want to be shutting down options. We want to be right options as well as
Okay.
yeah. And your question specifically is about, so at Starkey, the PTA funds additional teachers basically so that we can maintain smaller class sizes in upper grades instead of changing from 22 to 32 at the fourth grade level. So does that reflect that in here in terms of occupancy, or? Yeah, I don't know if that reflects it. No, it doesn't.
So in other words, they're not taking a hit. You're not drawing the wrong conclusion that there's under enrollment.
You're not using a denominator of 33, you're using a denominator and you guys are maintaining. That's my question.
Yeah, so that is the question.
Yeah, what's the denominator?
For those in the Zoom, we are going to come back to the main presentation now. Feel free to come back, and we're going to be starting pretty soon.
All right, I'm going to invite those of us who are in person to come back to our seats. I'm also going to invite those of you who are online to fill out the Google form. I see we don't have a lot of responses yet on the Google form, so please do take time to share your feedback. Thank you for adding that to the chat again. Okay. We got some folks in person who are continuing with their questions, so I'm going to invite people to come on back. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to thank you all for taking the time to engage with us. I particularly want to thank those who have already come to several meetings and are here again to make sure that you are engaging and that you're sharing. I know that this information is repeat for if you've been to several other meetings, but we do really appreciate you showing up time and time again. Before I go into our frequently asked questions, I want to address one of the frequently asked questions that has been in this room, which is this information, is the feedback that we're giving today going to impact the criteria for school closures, mergers, and co-locations? And so the answer to that question is no. That is a separate process. And so one of the things that we talked about in my group was how are the language programs going to be impacted with school closures, mergers, and co-locations? And so as we will have fewer schools, we will see that for some of the schools that may be closed, it might be a school that closes that has a language program. And so what we would need to do then is look at where else would we host this language program. And so we hope you leave today knowing that if the school closes, it doesn't mean that we're going to close out that language program forever. Our goal is to move the program to be able to continue to strengthen and align our resources. And so we want to make sure that you all understand that commitment. And the reason that we've done this additional engagement is because that may be a really difficult decision for you and your family to make. Should your school close? Should your school be merged? Should your school be co-located? And it impacts the language program. That's why we began this session talking about this is what the biliteracy program is, this is what the DLI program is, because you may be welcoming students from a different program, or you might be moving, and you might be faced with the decision of, where would I put my child? And so that is the purpose for our engagement today, is to make sure that you know that we are committed, even though we are going to have fewer schools, we would love to maintain the same number of language programs. And part of that is making sure that we maintain the same number of teachers for those programs. Okay. So some of our frequently asked questions, I feel like I've talked about this a couple of times, but the difference between biliteracy and dual language immersion programs, what is the difference? This is a very frequently asked question. So I just want to reiterate that both programs use the same curriculum and they have the same guidelines. So if we start at 80% in kindergarten in the target language and 20% English, and you move up to 50-50. That is true for the biliteracy program and the DLI program for that same language. And they do have similar outcomes for students when they're well implemented. Another frequently asked question, I think we also addressed this a bit, is why does the enrollment center only send students to certain schools? And so we saw, for example, where we have a lot of vacancies, we say, how could there be 400 vacancies in a program that is so in high demand? And the reason for that is we are a choice district, and so families choose where students go. So just because we have an opening at a school doesn't mean that the family would choose that school or that opening. So that is part of the complexity of this that's important to share. The next question is, why do we need to test students in order to enter language programs? So for the immersion programs, there is a test given to make sure that there's a balance of language. Going back to those guiding principles for dual language education, one of the most important pieces of multilingual programs is making sure that students are modeling language for each other. And so we have to make sure that there's a balance. And we do ask students to just demonstrate basic proficiency that's age level appropriate so that we have that balance of native speakers, bilingual students, and non-native speakers. Another frequently asked question is, why can't the Multilingual Pathways Department fund the extra teachers that the programs need? And since 2017, the central office team has been greatly reduced. There used to be the PEEF, the Public Education Enrichment Fund, but those budgets are now included in school site budgets. And so many years ago, Multilingual Pathways Department would say, oh, there's a language program at this school. We're going to hire a program that can go support that classroom. If there's an open classroom, the multilingual department will send a teacher there that is multilingual to support the program. There is not funding to do that at this time. And then the next question is, that we've heard a lot is, what will happen if my school or my language program changes? And so again, another purpose of this session today is for us to know, what is it that you value about your current language program right now? What is the reason that you enrolled your child in a language program right now? Because we want to lift this up to the team that's going to be supporting the transition for those families and students that may have to change either their school or their program. And so everything that you're sharing tonight is going to this transition team so that we can support in when it does happen next year. In the fall, when we do begin to get some of the answers to these questions, that we will have already had some information of what are you thinking about, and if we do have to, for example, merge a program, what is it that you really value about that program, so we can hold on to that value even if the program is located in a different place. Okay, so we have time for some clarifying questions. And we also have questions that we want to know what questions would need to be answered as we continue with the resource alignment process. Before that, sorry, I wish this slide would have been first. I do want to talk about some next steps. And so again, this is all part of the resource alignment initiative. The reason that we're holding separate sessions for the language pathways is just to make sure that you will have the space to process this. Our language pathways and programs are housed within our overall SFUSD school portfolio, right? And so we want to just provide an additional space to think about how this might impact some of those programs. So right now we're nearing the end of phase 1, where we gathered input from the community on the draft consolidation, or I'm sorry, the draft consolidation criteria for school closures, co-locations, and mergers. Next will be phase 2, that will be July through October, and SFUSD will make an initial recommendation for our new portfolio of schools. And then we'll have third-party organizations assess equity and environmental impact of those recommendations. And so that means that we are going to look at the criteria that will be determined to say which schools will continue to be open, which ones should merge, co-locate, or close. And then phase 3 is in December 2024. The Board of Education will ultimately vote on the package of schools. And so we wanted to share that because we did hear the question about, if my school is struggling with enrollment, does that mean my school's going to close? Not necessarily. Enrollment is not the sole factor that is going to be determining, the process of resource alignment. And so we are looking at the criteria. There are third-party organizations that are looking at, if this school were to close in this neighborhood, perhaps there wouldn't be another school for 5 miles. And so what would be the impact for that community? What would be the environmental impacts and things like that? So I just want to uplift that. What we do want to hear from you, though, is as we continue to strengthen our language programs, what are the values that you hold, that you want us to continue to hold as we strengthen them, as we make sure that we have quality teachers, as we make sure we have quality curriculum, as we look at diversity across our language programs and some of the issues we've had with segregation that came up in one of the groups I was in. So that is really the purpose of tonight. So I'm open to answering any clarifying questions. If you have questions about the resource alignment that we don't have the answer for today, we will definitely hold them and uplift them. So, okay, I'm gonna actually start in the back of the room over there, and actually, you can come up to the podium to ask your question. That way people can hear online. And then I saw two or three hands up here in person, and then let's do 3 questions here, and then we'll move to 3 questions online. And make sure the mic is on.
Hello. Hi, I'm Jaehyun. Thank you. I'm hearing the commitment I'm hearing SFUSD's commitment to language pathways, and I'm hearing SFUSD's commitment to the diversity of the different kinds of language pathways like biliteracy and bilingualism. Does SFUSD also have a commitment to ensuring like every language out there will continue to have some kind of language program? Like, for example, Korean, it's tiny compared to like Cantonese and Spanish. So one of the concerns is like, oh no, they're just going to wipe us out. And so is there that kind of commitment? Because I haven't heard anything along those lines so far. Thank you. Oh, sorry. My child goes to Claire Lilienthal in the Korean Immersion Program, and I have an incoming kinder this fall going to the same program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think what we've heard a lot is how are we recruiting and retaining teachers for these programs too. So the answer is we will have fewer programs because we'll have fewer schools, but we don't want to offer fewer languages. So we actually want to continue our recruitment. We want to continue our retention. And as we mentioned, just because one school or one one school that houses a program may be closed, we want to continue to have that program open, whether it be in a different space or not, whether it be merged. So in a short answer, we want as many languages as possible, and we need qualified teachers for those languages in order for it to be a quality program. So I say this very seriously. Your ideas about teacher recruitment and retention for multilingual programs are super important because it is a crisis that we're having across the state of California. And so I do hope that we can continue our pipeline that we've had in the past for bilingual teachers.
Thank you. So I'm hearing a commitment to all the kinds of languages, like thank you.
Yes, absolutely. You guys could, I said 3 questions in person, so whoever 3 people, we have space for 2 more if anyone wants to come up to the mic.
Hi, I have a technical question for you. I have children in elementary, middle, and high school, all in different progressions of the language programs in Spanish, but my question is actually very technical because next year 2 of my children will be shifting from elementary to middle and middle to high school, and based on the phases, the end of phase, the last phase is December, so I'm curious how SFUSD is considering the application and lottery, like all the steps of enrollment for the following year based on this timeline, because it will obviously be tight for parents to make a decision if it's turning in January for this process.
Yeah, it is definitely going to be a tight process. Tammy, do you want to, I see, yeah. You got to come up to a mic because I know you got to be a superstar in the mic. We got to make sure that people online can hear as well. So thank you, Tammy.
Yes, so we are, our goal is to publish what we call the One Team Transition Plan, which is a resource guide for staff, families, and schools that will lay out all the implementation steps. So it answers your question about what will happen in terms of student choice and enrollment. This will come out when the recommended portfolio comes out in the fall, and it will be in time, and families will receive support before the enrollment application deadline is due at the end of January. So that's why we're on this tight timeline, is to make sure everybody's informed and is aware and has the opportunity before the application deadline is due. I'm not giving any specific details about those choices yet because the plan is still in development. We're working with the enrollment center, and we're working with our human resources department and our facilities department, but we will have that plan out as soon as possible, but definitely at the same time that we announce any school changes, which would be in the fall, early fall.
Thank you, Tammy. We can take one more question in person, and then we'll turn it over to virtual.
I have a question that I actually did ask already to a small group, but I figured since I have the microphone, I'll ask the larger group. A lot of the sort of missions and the items that are considered priority are access and equity. In this discussion, in particular, the equity and access have been really geared just towards the language program itself. A lot of our language programs are also integrated with general education. So I want to understand how equity is being considered if changes to one language program within a school that has two programs is keeping equity for those in the other program impacted. So I don't think you have the answer now, but I'm really hoping that in the lens of your criteria, that is something that's being considered, especially with the big push right now to make schools community-based and location-based. This is still the same question, but it's actually different, so I'm going to just ask. Can you guys give us a timeline, like a really detailed timeline of meetings, when and how we're going to be told what the recommendations are, when there's opportunities to get back together and actually say something about it? Because right now it feels like the information is just going to be flowing towards the public, and then the only option that we have is then to reconsider putting our kids somewhere else. So I think that there's not enough spelled out in more detail for the timeline for us to prepare ourselves to respond. I don't think that that's clear.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So as you said, I'm not fully able to answer all of those questions, and this is the current timeline that we have, but as you mentioned, it doesn't provide those details that you're asking for. So definitely we'll continue to provide more information. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Eric, who's going to lead us. We have time for 3 questions online.
Yes, we had somebody who had their hand raised online, but now I don't see that person in the chat. Oh, never mind. I see somebody. Okay, Penelope, I am going to unmute your mic, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. It's sort of related to the previous question, but I wasn't quite clear on what you said you could share or couldn't share. I understand that over the summer, there's going to be like a preliminary identification of the portfolio of schools, and then in October, it sounds like it'll be presented to the board, so that will be public. Will the preliminary one be made public and be part of public conversation over the summer or not?
I'm going to invite Phil Kim up to answer that question.
The short answer is no. What we are planning for over the summer, if you've attended the town halls, Dr. Wayne describes it as kind of like the combination of the art and the science. What we are hoping to do is come to the public in the fall with the final list of decisions made around school portfolio changes. We don't have any plans right now to share any sort of interim analysis getting us to that point. For a lot of reasons, as one could imagine, around we don't want to alarm communities. We really don't know, for example, what the results of the equity audit may say. And we don't want to put out a preliminary list that may actually end up changing over time. We want to be able to come to the public confident with the plan that we've provided.
Thank you, Penelope. Thank you, Phil. So it looks like we have time for 2 more. We have we have M and then Amanda Gibbon. I'm gonna unmute you, M. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, hi, M. We can hear you.
Hi, Eric. So my question is, I just want to be very clear. So is this saying that a school site could lose their language pathway program, but their school site could still stay open? And or maybe one of the language pathway programs at the school site shuts down and another one stays open? And if that happens, how are you all deciding that? So I would love to know that. Are you going to decide which language pathway programs stay at a school site if you were actually going to close any language pathway programs other than just closing schools?
Yes, I can answer that question. So the answer to both of those questions is yes. It is possible that a school may stay open, but the language program may move out of that school and be located in a different location. And it may be possible that a school that has English and then 2 additional languages might lose one of the language programs there. That might be moved. I do want to say we want to use the language of we're going to move programs. We don't want to lose programs. And I've heard that over and over again. So we would love to continue to offer as many classrooms as possible. And in order to do that, we have to align our resources. We also want to be responsive to offering programs in the places that our multilingual students are living. We want to make sure that we're moving with the communities that are moving. Give the example of our newcomer center. It might not be where all of our newcomers are right now living in the city. It might have been when the newcomer center opened, but we know that there have been many different patterns. So we do want to remain committed to having language programs robust and continue to offer the same languages that we're currently offering, but it will mean that we are going to have to move some of the programs around.
Thank you, Em, and thank you, Christina. Okay, so we have one more person that raised their hand on the Zoom. Amanda, I'm gonna turn on your mic. Go ahead.
Hi. My question is just around open seats and how that's thought about in language pathways versus non-language pathways, because it feels like the demand at kindergarten is going to be different as we have kids attrition from the programs. Kids can't transition in the same way that they can in a lot of other programs unless they have the academic skills in that specific language. So I just would want things looked at apples to apples and wondering how that's taken into account as demand is considered. Thanks.
Can I ask a clarifying question to your question? What
Absolutely.
So are you asking when we have open seats, are we looking at which seats are open? Are they for native speakers or non-native speakers?
Yeah, that, and also, are they all in 5th grade or are they in kinder? Like where along the pathway those seats are open feels important, like an important part of the story in terms of best tailoring to like the actual needs of the community.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, we are looking at, we have that breakdown by grade level, and we do have obviously higher enrollment in kindergarten for the dual language programs. And we do see attrition, but I don't have the numbers, so I can't confirm. But what I've seen anecdotally is the attrition in 4th and 5th grade in language programs is similar to general education. Attrition meaning
great.
Students exiting the program. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay. All right. So with that, we are going to begin to wrap up tonight. Again, I want to thank you so much for coming out, for spending your time, for sharing your thoughts. We hope that you leave tonight feeling our commitment to elementary language programs, to the 3 models that we've had for many, many years in San Francisco Unified, which is the biliteracy, dual language immersion, and the world language program. And we do appreciate your engagement with us. We wanted to hold this space for all of you who are large advocates of the language programs and hope that you can share this information with others at your school sites. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
And thank you very much for those of you guys who participated on the Zoom. We will be posting the video from this Zoom online, and we'll be taking all the questions that people have asked in the question and answer, and we'll be posting those questions as well as whatever answers we were able to provide in a Google Doc and posting that all online at the Resource Alignment Initiative webpage of the SFUST. And thank you so much for coming and for being a part of this and providing some valuable questions.